What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Diablo Franchise Iceberg. This is going to be part 3. So if you have not seen part 1 or 2, please just go ahead and come over to the channel, go to the playlist, and I reordered it so you can listen to the first one and it's going to go all the way down. Or you can just wait until I finish them all. You probably have like a 2 or 3 hour video to go ahead and enjoy and watch. Anyways, let's go ahead and get right into the video, starting with our very first topic, which is the scoundrel from Diablo 3 is in Diablo 4. Now, although I do remember the scoundrel from Diablo 3, I'm going to be 100% transparent with you all right now. I never even realized that he was in Diablo 4. I did not even know his real name because, number one, I don't even like using him as a mercenary, and number two, Diablo 3 simply wasn't my favorite Diablo game whatsoever. So you would be forgiven for not even realizing that you talked to him in D4. Where is he? He's in Hawazar. He is in the town known as Backwater. He actually is the person running that town. I'll go ahead and put a clip in here for you guys just so you can see what I'm talking about. And there we go. There he is. So you guys all got to see him. I'm laughing because I just time traveled to get here and I didn't have to watch that video again. I've talked to this guy numerous times, and I think it's kind of funny that I never really put 2 and 2 together to realize who the hell this guy was, simply because I never paid attention to who the scoundrel was in Diablo 3 to even begin with. Now, what's funny about this is, I guess my own headcanon is that he is basically riding the coattails of the Nephilim from D3 and made it seem like he was way better than he actually was. Like, he's super skilled at fighting and things like that, and he just kind of swindled all these people that are here in Backwater until eventually he's running the whole town. So I guess good job, scoundrel. Good job being a scoundrel, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, I don't care. Do you? And now I have either good or terrible news for you guys, because I think there is 3 or 4 facts like this in this part of the iceberg. And that's simply because I felt like not everybody would have known that these things exist in Diablo 4, but a fair majority of people that are actually Diablo fans should know. But then again, to be 100% honest with you, I mean, not a lot of people really pay attention to the story when they're playing Diablo. I mean, I do, but I'm a weirdo. I love Diablo lore, so I'm always going to be looking out for things like that. And even though I was looking out for things like that, I still didn't even notice that that was the scoundrel, man. So yeah, so here's the Linden, and hopefully you have a good life. Next topic. All right, so next we have the Iron Wolves from D4 and D2. I already know right off the bat, it might seem like it's kind of weird for me to be saying, oh, you know, hey, these guys from D4 are actually in D2. But the thing is I never paid enough attention to the story, I guess, in Act 3, because that is by far my least favorite act, or at least I never put 2 and 2 together. I didn't really even realize who the Iron Wolves were until I played Diablo 4. So when I went back one day to go play Diablo 2, and the mercenary leader there is like, oh yeah, hey, we're the Iron Wolves, it blew my mind. I had no effing clue that the Iron Wolves were in Diablo 2, and so it actually made it a little bit better for me, because now I know that it simply wasn't this weird faction that they just threw into D4 for a season, which is what I thought they did. And in fact, it's kind of weird because a lot of things from Act 3 end up coming back into D4. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think the devs of Diablo 4 actually spent quite a fair bit of time with the world building and with attention to detail. And I'm happy that they actually cared when it came to making Diablo 4, at least in terms of the story. You know, I mean, the gameplay could be a whole nother issue, but you know, we don't need to talk about that right now, really, because that'd be like an hour-and-a-half long video of me bitching about things that don't really even matter anymore, because no one's playing D4 except me. So next topic. Really quick here, this is me in the editing phase. I forgot to mention something, but there is a crazy theory coming up in this iceberg towards the end of this video that I think you might actually enjoy hearing. So please stick around to the end of the video for that fact, or you can just jump forward. That's fine with me. As long as somebody clicks on the video, I get a view, so I don't really care. But yeah, one or the other. But back to past Brandon. Okay, so strength bug. I will do my best to try to explain this one, but this one is a little bit complicated. Not crazy complicated, but you at least have to have a basic understanding of the way the game works to really get this one. So let's say you take a character and you respec the character. So when you require certain charms and other items to actually reach the requirement to wear whatever item it is that you're wearing, after you respec and put your points back in, it'll appear to other people as if you don't actually have anything on. But what's really going on here is the game, when you're online, can't tell because you respec that you have enough of whatever it is that you needed, strength, dexterity, whatever, to actually wear those items. So to other people, it will seem like you only have the base armor on, whatever that happens to be. If you're on Amazon, I mean, I think we all know how characters look when you first start the game. We've seen it a million times. But others won't be able to see it. You can see it, but others won't be able to. And now you might be wondering, who cares? Well, the reason this became a thing is because of PvP. So a lot of times when people will go out to fight each other, one of the things they would do is sometimes if you have enough knowledge of the game, you already can basically or roughly figure out what it is that your opponent is wearing. So in order to counteract that, people would use this strength bug to make the character appear as if it was just the base armor. This way, they can have an advantage in the fight by being able to pretty much mask what kind of character they actually were. Now, I don't know all the intricacies of actual PvP. I never got into it myself. I don't even know if they had tournaments for PvP. They probably did, but that is something I would have to research to know more about. But I think we can all see how this could actually be very beneficial to you if you are playing PvP. It's giving you a huge advantage. I would hope that if there was a competitive scene for this PvP in Diablo 2, especially back in the day, that they would have made it so that you weren't allowed to do that. But again, I am not 100% sure, so I don't want to say either way. As I'm sure you can imagine, it's not something that's really prevalent nowadays, but if you wanted to do it, as far as I know, it is still in the game, and you could do that if you really wanted to, but I don't know why you would really want to do it. So let's move on to the next, the Pally's death. So this entry is actually referring to the fate of the paladin from Diablo 2. In Diablo 4, shortly after the game was released, it was discovered that the paladin from D2 was actually in the game, but not in the way you might think. In the quest, A Lost Legacy, we fought our way past the ruins of something, I believe it was called Rakad Keep. Once you get there, there is actually an effigy you can find, where when you read it, it talks about a paladin by the name of Marshal Karthus. It also says that he was the slayer of Mephisto and that he was basically the protector of the light. This right here proves that the person that they are referring to in this effigy is the paladin from Diablo 2, because we know who slayed Mephisto, and I'm sure that that thing wasn't created like 1,000 years ago or something crazy like that. Although I guess it could be possible, I just don't really see that being the case. I'm pretty sure that they put that there so that we would know and understand that this is one of the people, because in canon it was a group of people that took out Mephisto and Baal and Diablo and yada yada. So this is a way of confirming that this is the paladin who helped to slay Mephisto. Shortly after this, while exploring the world, we actually meet a paladin praying to a shrine of Akarat, and I believe her name is Ksenia or something along those lines. For the keep where the paladin was has been taken over by evil creatures. She asks you for help, and you go in there and you help her to take the keep back over for the light. And after you play through the mission and take out the boss, you actually stumble upon the literal body of the paladin from Diablo 2, still in his armor that you see at the very beginning of Diablo 2 in the player selection screen, with the shield that you also see there as well. And so now through playing this quest and also through listening or reading the Book of Lorath, we actually learn the fate of the paladin from D2. And I'm gonna try to make it a shorter story for you guys. Not like it's a crazy long story anyways, but here we go. Basically, there was a paladin in the order known as Saint-Cricur. Now, he became possessed by Mephisto because he had a shard of Mephisto's soulstone, like a little blue shard, that was actually in his hand. He could not contain Mephisto, which is pretty obvious. If you played pretty much any Diablo game, I think we all know that there is no human that can really control one of the prime evils, and they pretty much always get corrupted unless they're saved by a giant tiger god or something like that in a jungle, which I know sounds crazy, but actually happened. And soon after becoming possessed, he actually is the vessel of Mephisto in Diablo 2. So Karthus, one of the members of the group that killed Mephisto, after the events of Diablo 2, the Paladin Order is sitting around wondering, what are we going to do with this guy's body? Because his body still like radiated hatred, and they were worried that just his body being somewhere was going to actually corrupt other people around it. So what they decide to do is they go and they put him into a crypt, and they surround his crypt with black obsidian and a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm not even going to go into. We'll just say that they're traps to make sure nobody can come in and actually mess with his body. But when they were finished doing that, they quickly realized that it's not going to be enough to contain the corruption that is just radiating off Sankakur's body. So Karthus, along with I believe 2 other paladins, actually give their lives up and commit their souls to protecting the tomb of Sankakur. And then afterwards, years later, the Wanderer from Diablo 4 is the one who has to end up putting this spirit down, because Karthus comes back and then attacks the Wanderer, and it becomes a boss battle, and we have to kill him and all the other corrupted paladins who were also these spectral ghosts that were sitting there protecting this guy's body. So it's actually pretty sad when you think about it, because this guy was a hero of Diablo 2, and if it wasn't for him, then the primevals would have just taken over all the sanctuary, and the reward he gets for doing this is to live a life of having to protect this corrupted hatred body, which then in turn infects him, and he becomes corrupted and has all this hatred until he is killed as a ghost by the Wanderer in Diablo 4. So it's pretty bad. It's pretty tragic. Feel bad for the guy, but that's just Diablo, man. Right? That's how it always goes. In case you haven't noticed, none of these stories really end in a happy ending. And you might be thinking, well, what about D3? That one ended in a happy ending. No, it didn't. Half the world's population was murdered by Malthael, man. Like, that's why things have gotten so bad in Diablo 4. And look at Tyrael. We haven't even seen him yet. He supposedly became the Angel of Wisdom, and we haven't even seen the guy. He's probably still immortal out there somewhere, and he's like 115 years old. And if we do see him, I wouldn't be surprised if he was like all decrepit and stuff and in a wheelchair and things like that. Wouldn't be surprised whatsoever, because that's what happens to heroes in Sanctuary. Next topic. Ormus is in Diablo 4. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this one, because if you did not realize he was in Diablo 4, then either A, you don't have the expansion, or B, you really don't care about lore whatsoever when it comes to Diablo, and you're probably not this deep into this video. You probably would have clicked off when I first mentioned the scoundrel in Diablo 3. Let's be real. But yes, at this point, he is the person that is running the council in Nahantu. One thing that I've always found to be strange about him was how he always refers to himself in third person. Not only that, but if you listen to the dialogue that you can have with him in Diablo 4, and I'll play it for you guys so you can hear what I'm talking about, he says a bunch of really weird things. I guess he's known as like a warrior poet. And it's like, what is this, like Vivek's long lost brother or something? Because they both kind of do the exact same thing. Or do you think maybe Vivek was based on Ormus? I kind of doubt it, because not a lot of people even know this about Ormus. But yeah, he is a sorcerer, and I am convinced at this point that if he is not possessed by other beings, that he could very well just straight up be insane and hear voices, which is why he refers to himself in the third person.
Stranger, watch your tongue.
Calm yourself, Iso. Ormus isn't some fledgling to be cupped in your hands. You speak to Ormus, stranger, but not Ormus alone. Sometimes he shares his voice with others. At this moment, you also speak to Adaja, the first breather. She greets you.
Even Deckard Cain actually comments on this and says that he thinks that Ormus is just batshit crazy, basically, which is why he keeps referring to himself in the third person. But I really wouldn't be surprised if he was possessed by some kind of demon or something. Oh man, what if it was like, what's that demon from Diablo Immortal? Scourge or Skarn, something like that. If you know, you know. If you don't, you really don't care. But man, what if that's what happened to Ormus? Is he, well, no, because that took place after ignore everything I just said. I'm sorry, I just wasted your time. Long story short, he is in Diablo 4. And also, I did make this a separate topic, but I guess you could just think it was the same topic. One of the points on this iceberg is Ormus is also in World of Warcraft. Now, it is not exactly him. The character model doesn't really look like him, but it is definitely based on Ormus, because when you do quests for this guy, he turns around and he gives you rare rings. Sound familiar? That's what Ormus did for you in Diablo 2. So this guy is 100% supposed to be an Easter egg referring back to Diablo 2. And although he might look extremely different, there is a reason why he's giving out rare rings, just like Ormus from D2. Bell wave skipping. So this one is also a little bit complicated to explain, but I will do my best. In Diablo 2, you can completely skip all of the waves going up to fight Baal. Now, to do this, you have to manipulate the game. Obviously, I know that's probably like a no shit Sherlock moment, but that it is what it is. So the way you do this is first you have to go out and clear the throne room. After you clear the throne room, there is a threshold in the entrance to the throne room. This threshold is a little bit behind, because you know when you're looking at the throne room, it kind of goes like this, right? Comes in, and then there's that big archway that goes out. About halfway through that archway is what the game considers to be the throne room. So before he spawns the first wave, if you wait for the exact right moment to where they are about to spawn, and then you take a step out of the throne room, the game will start an internal timer. And this internal timer is usually about 10 seconds. What the game is doing is it'll be like, okay, is there monsters in here? And if there isn't any monsters in there, the game will then spawn the next wave because it will think that those monsters are dead. So you go back to where the threshold is at the 10-second mark, right before the minions actually spawn, and you leave the throne room. The game will scan and it will think that, oh wait, the player is not in the throne room. So it will stop the animation from occurring and they won't spawn. Now you can run forward a little bit to go back into the throne room, and when you do that, the game will be like, oh wait, the player is now in the throne room, I need to spawn these monsters. So then you just do it again, you just go back over that threshold, and when you do, the game again on its internal timer is gonna be like, oh wait, there's nobody in the throne room, I don't need to spawn anything, or slash they're already dead. So you step back forward again about 5 seconds, and once again, I'm sorry I'm saying again so much, man, hope you're not trying to take a shot every time I say again, because you're about to get really wasted. The game will think, oh hey, you're in the throne room, and it'll try to spawn the monsters, yada yada. You can do this 5 times in a row. Now the way for you to actually be able to tell if this is working or not is a lot of people use audio cues for this. Once they take that first step out of the throne room, if they hear Baal laughing, you know at that point you need to count down to 10 seconds because the game is starting its timer. So after 10 seconds, right, you step back in, timer is going to scan again and think everything's dead, and then try to spawn the next wave. Now you keep doing this, and if you keep hearing him laugh, that's how you know that it's working. And if you stop either on the 4th try or exactly on the 5th try, then when you go back into the throne room for the last time, Baal will just turn around and go back into the World Stone Chamber. And as I'm sure you can imagine, this was a huge find for speedrunners. It's also a huge find for people trying to farm Baal. It is kind of tricky and hard to do, but there are plenty of tutorial videos out there if you want a more thorough description of this skip, and you can get it down. I suggest trying to use the art to figure out when it is that you're supposed to come back and go in and then come out, because when I was doing it, I couldn't do it for a while, but once I started listening to those, it really helped me out with my timing. And it turns into something where you're pretty much like, okay, I hear the laughing, and you count to 10, turn around, step in, come out, count to 5, turn around, step in, come out, count to 10, blah blah blah. I think you guys understand. And you can still currently do this in Diablo 2 Reimagined as well. So it isn't something that is specifically put only in Lord of Destruction or something like that. It does still exist in D2R. Now, it is a little bit harder in D2R because the textures are different. And in Lord of Destruction, you could see like these little black lines where like the tiles for the map come up, and it was way easier because you could just use that line as like a guide point, right? Because that line was the literal line where the game considered you either inside or outside of the throne room. So as I'm sure you can imagine, that made it way easier than it is now, because now you just have to know where that line is, as opposed to at least seeing some kind of vague visual indication of, okay, I'm in the throne room, okay, I'm not in the throne room. Also, I think Mr. Llama has made a video about this one, so if you want to check out that video, I would definitely recommend it. Mr. Llama's great. great. I don't watch everything by him, but I like him. I think he's a good guy, and his videos are awesome. And a different version of this iceberg, Mr. Llama, was actually included in the iceberg, and I didn't include him in the first part of the iceberg because I didn't feel like it really belonged in the iceberg, I suppose. But I mean, he is amazing, so blah blah. I'm gonna, that's enough. That's enough glazing on Mr. Llama. Let's just continue with the video. Diablo bans. Now this is referring actually to Diablo Immortal, and if you didn't know, Diablo Immortal is a very predatory game. In fact, it was so predatory and so horrendously bad when it came to the microtransactions that multiple countries literally banned Diablo Immortal. Now, back then, I think this was about 4 years ago, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. This subject has become much more active, even in politics, although in other parts of the world, they were starting to wisen up even before us Americans really did. And I know us gamers have been bitching about this stuff for years, but none of the politicians were even caring about this, nor would they ever care about it for years to come. And in fact, to this day, we still support these games, so we never really did anything about it of any substance. But these other countries, they viewed it as gambling, and this gambling was being marketed to children. So they said, nah, you're not gonna do that in our country, and they just straight made it illegal for them to even do that. And that's when the whole controversy came out where they were calling it surprise mechanics and things like that instead of gambling, because, you know, they do what companies do. Like back in all of a sudden every single job in the world was considered essential unless you were super rich, in which case you could just go home and do your work. But you know, the guy at Taco Bell working for minimum wage has to be out there at work serving you every day and putting himself to risk. But anyways, yeah, it was gonna cost like $100,000 for you to actually max out your character. Now you could max out your character, but if I remember correctly, it was gonna take people literal years to be able to max their character out, which is where we got the term whales from, which I briefly considered putting that onto this iceberg as well, but I think everybody knows what a Diablo well is, so I didn't really feel the need to include it. But I did want to include this because surprisingly, a lot of people did not even realize that a lot of these things that are going on now with the microtransactions really stem from Diablo Immortal. Like, yeah, Diablo Immortal really screwed up the ecosystem for game developers. But yeah, so I guess we can thank Diablo Immortal for helping people take this a little more seriously to get these microtransactions out of video games. And I just wish that America would follow suit, like pretty much the rest of the world. Okay, so we are at the final point in the iceberg for this video, and this theory is kind of out there, but once you see the evidence, you might actually think there's something to it. I know before I saw it, I thought there's no way that this is true, but after seeing the evidence for it, I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I feel like there is something weird and fishy and just crazy going on here. So let's dive into it, and this topic is gonna be the Iron Wolves are actually cannibals. And now to explain this, I'm gonna have to jump off camera here, which I am about to do. So right now you should be looking at a screen. And now I went into the game to take this footage so I could properly describe to you what this theory is and how it really came about. So when you go to the Iron Wolves encampment, most of the time we're just running through there and we're not really trying to find anything that might hint to some kind of lore or story, because again, these are ARPGs and a lot of us like to rush through because we don't really want to deal with it. And until I heard about this, I never really looked further into it myself. But I do have to say, it does seem kind of weird now that I'm here looking at all this stuff. So first off, you will find an NPC at the Iron Wolves encampment named Asa. I'm assuming that's how to pronounce it. If I got it wrong, I apologize. Now, you can ask her what has happened. She's trying to give you a quest, but the one we want to look at is, are their belongings worth such a risk? She tells you a story that she and some of her soldiers went into some dungeon somewhere and everybody died, but she made it out, and now she's wanting to go back to retrieve the bodies. And now one can assume that this is obviously to bury them and to make sure that they get the proper respect that they deserve, or at least you would think that. But let's listen to what she says.
To survive in the desert, a pack of wolves can't allow anything to go to waste. When an iron wolf dies, all that they carried is shared among the rest. It's how we honor them.
And as you can see from that clip, she is actually saying that when an Iron Wolf dies, they can't let anything go to waste. She also mentions a pack of wolves. What is she talking about? Well, in the wild, when wolves die like this, there are moments where they will cannibalize each other. They will pretty much eat anything that they can, especially in the desert where there is no water and food is very, very scarce. Now, this is not all, but this is just an entry point to the theory. So first, I would like you to take a look into this tent right here. Now, the person in front of the tent is a healer, or at least that's what it says that he is. But if you look in the tent, do you notice anything that seems kind of strange? Because at first glance, you would think, oh, hey, there's a guy over here, and it seems like he's hurt pretty badly, so this healer must be healing the guy. But if you look closer, you would see that that's actually not true, because that right there is just a pair of legs. There is no torso on this body. It is just two legs and a bunch of red substance in that tent, which most likely is blood. Now, let me ask you this. Why would you just keep a pair of legs inside of the tent for the healer? Doesn't that seem kind of strange? Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, maybe the game devs just never finished putting the model in there. Maybe they thought you wouldn't be able to see it. Do you not see how wide open the tent is? It is clear as day that it is just a pair of legs. And there are other instances where NPCs are sitting in tents and you can see the full model. It's kind of weird if this is the exact one and only time that in a tent they simply used a pair of legs instead of an entire NPC as a model for a character sitting there. Don't you think? Now, if you turn around and you run just a little bit up the way here, you will actually find a couple of soldiers sitting there eating some gray looking strange gruel, I assume, or some kind of soup right there next to where the dead bodies are. Let me ask you something. Would you want to eat next to a dead body? Would you have an appetite if you were eating next to a dead body? If your answer is yes, please, for the love of God, unsubscribe and never come back. Like, oh my God. Now, I hate to be that guy, but we're gonna be that guy. Let's listen to what she said again.
To survive in the desert, a pack of wolves can't allow anything to go to waste.
That seems a little more disturbing now in retrospect, doesn't it? But that's not all. Now, if we run just a little bit to the left side of the tent here, we can actually find, guess what? Another dead body. But this one is fully intact, whereas the other one only had legs. And at first you might be thinking, oh, well, this might be one of their fallen soldiers. And that's absolutely a fair judgment to make. But let me ask this. Why do they need to guard a dead body? Really? Why would they guard a dead body? Just to honor the fallen soldier? Or could it be that they're guarding this body because this is their food for the night and they don't want the wolves or monsters or something like that coming in to eat this thing before they can get to it? Just food for thought. Now, you might be saying right now that obviously they were going back to that dungeon to retrieve their friends because they wanted the treasure or the money or something like that that the soldiers might have had on them or that might have been in the tomb. But the thing is the Iron Wolves are not poor. They can afford to get real food if they really want to. Not only that, but there is an abundance of wildlife for them to eat. But what is strange is if you walk down the pathway there, and I believe, let's see here, yes, so right now if you're looking on the screen, the tent would be to the right hand side. You can see this small area on the ground over here, and I want you to see the direction that my character is looking in and the direction that that arrow is pointing. Why? Because have you ever noticed that there was just a pile of gold down here? If you look at the map, we don't have access to that area. So why is there a giant pile of gold down here? Why do I bring it up? It might just be a coincidence. It might have nothing to do with this guy's theory on the Iron Wolves being cannibals, but it is strange that they have all this money here and yet they don't seem to be using it to buy things like food. Also, right here on that exact same bridge, there is someone known as the Doomsayer. And what is he doing? He is crying out to whatever god it is that he believes in because he feels like they are terrible people. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Fools! There is no shelter from hellfire! What are you waiting for?
Interesting. Why is he saying that? Could it be because he has a guilty conscience about what they are doing? Does he know that maybe he could be next? And that is why he is saying, hey, what are you waiting for? I'm right here. You fools, there is no shelter from hellfire. Now, you can attribute this to something that he might say during the main campaign, but it is still kind of weird nonetheless that there is literally a rambling crazy dude in a town that very well might be full of cannibals who's sitting there lamenting the fact that they're evil people and that hellfire is coming for them and that they should just stop waiting and asking what they are waiting for. There is absolutely no context to these, and paired with other things we have discovered so far, it again seems a little sus. Now, in this town, they do have a dock, so you would think that they would be able to get a lot of fish. So if they are hungry, you would imagine they'd be able to get fish from this dock. But the only weird thing about that one is when you go to the dock to look, all you find there is dead fish. A whole bunch of dead fish right next to a dead body. And if they're so hungry, why aren't they eating these fish? Could it be because they no longer want to eat fish? Could it be that they've acquired the taste for human flesh? I don't know. Maybe. But again, a weird coincidence. Now, you can actually click on this body right here, and it does say something rather cryptic when you do. It says, "This forgotten corpse serves as a reminder that even though it is a beacon of life in a harsh land, that death still surrounds the oasis." And as you can see, there is still literal death all around this oasis. Is this just a weird placement? What could this mean? Well, there's many ways to interpret it, but the way that this theory likes to interpret this statement is it's telling you, the player, that these guys are not good people, and that anywhere the Iron Wolves go, death is sure to follow, and I would not be surprised if they happen to be eating the people. It reminds me of the termites from The Walking Dead. Yes, I'm going to use a Walking Dead example. If you have ever seen that series, there's a point in time in the series where they find a place that looks like a paradise, but then they quickly realize, oh crap, that's so-and-so's backpack, that's so-and-so's poncho. Where are they? Because we used to know those people. Well, it turns out that the people at the terminus station where they went were actually eating people. So they too were an oasis surrounded by death. In The Walking Dead, that group actually had a bunch of items from people that they ate. Wouldn't it be kind of strange if there was somewhere in the Iron Wolves encampment that had a bunch of stuff from people who are no longer around, like this? Don't know what's going on here. And that's not even the end of the theory yet, because there is another interesting conversation that you can have with another NPC in the Iron Wolves encampment that kind of raises another red flag. So let's go ahead and listen to that one too. We asked the NPC, hey, so how are your supplies here?
I shan't complain, save one ingredient. Gutweed. It's a plant the drowned eat. Nothing like it for delaying necrosis. I don't know who discovered this, but it becomes more potent when partly digested by drowned. Yeah, I made the same face when I first heard it too. I recommend wearing gloves.
Okay, let's stop for a second here and really think about what she just said. She said that somebody in the Iron Wolves encampment was able to find a plant called gutweed, and this gutweed was great for delaying necrosis. Do you know what necrosis is? Necrosis is the decay of cells or tissue through disease or injury. So in other words, say that you were dead, this plant would make it so that you would decay slower. Why would you need a medicine to make it so that bodies decay slower? And not only that, but she also says that she doesn't know who discovered this, but it becomes even more potent when partially digested by the drowned. I can only imagine how they were able to figure out that something in a dead thing's body was really good at delaying the process of necrosis, but I can think of one way in which this could have actually been discovered. And it is at about this point of the theory that even I myself am kind of like, yeah, this is weird. And yet there is still one more piece of evidence to talk about. And you might be thinking to yourself, man, this is a reach. And that's understandable. You might also be thinking to yourself, I don't think anybody that made Diablo 4 really ever intended for there to ever be some kind of cannibalism going on in Diablo 4. So then you might be actually surprised to know that just up the road from the Iron Wolves encampment, you can find a cellar that is titled Cannibals Hold. I can't make this stuff up, guys. So there must have been at least one developer, which I would imagine would have to be more, considering the fact that it actually became a hold, and I don't think that that's going to go through only one person's hands. But let's just say it did. That would still leave, at bare minimum, one person who was willing to include cannibalism in Diablo 4. But that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. That last one is kind of weird, and I even said myself, I didn't really believe it until I actually looked at this stuff myself. And even now, I don't necessarily believe it, but there's a good chunk of evidence, man, for that one, and it could very well be true. Who knows? Who knows, man? But anyways, go ahead and enjoy these bloopers while all of the suggested video and please sub to my channel stuff is playing, and I will see you guys on the next video. So, late. So there you go. There he was. Yep, he is definitely in Diablo 4, and I don't think any of us really care. So there he is, there you go. And what's crazy about that is it almost feels like maybe what actually happened here. And there you go. So yep, he was in Diablo 4 and so there you go. Yeah, fuck. So there you go. Yeah, he's actually in Diablo 4 too. 4-2. So there you go. Yeah, he's actually in Diablo 4 and he is a quest giver. And what's kind of funny about this, and my guess, so there you go. Yeah, he's actually in Diablo 4 and he is a quest giver.